They don't tell you about the silence that follows a scream. We were in a German hospital ward, the buzzing fluorescent lights overhead. It was a harsh, unforgiving environment.
I was staring at a silver tray, filled with steel needles, each one gleaming under those sterile lights. My little boy was pinned down under the heavy hands of strangers. His skin was turning a translucent, bruised shade of blue. He wasn't crying anymore. He was gasping, a high-pitched whistling wheeze that sounded like a dying bird. I looked at the doorway. It was empty. The man who swore to protect us was miles away, drowning his new fatherhood in cheap lager with his father.
He was only 4 days old. Just 4. That is the absolute definition of vulnerability. As the doctor pushed another needle into my son's tiny, fragile vein, a terrible realization washed over me. My first maternal act wasn't going to be rocking my baby to sleep. It was going to be surviving a war I didn't even know I was drafted into.
Part 1. The Shield of Anonymity. The silence ends.
Now, we move into the reality of the present. If you're wondering why you only hear my voice in this explainer, why I hide my face, there is a very deliberate structural reason. Because the monsters in our stories do not stay in the past. The legal battle for my children's peace is still raging in the shadows. In this ongoing conflict, my anonymity is the only shield we have left. People like to think monsters stay neatly contained in the past. They don't. But hiding my face doesn't mean hiding the truth. I hid my voice for years to keep the peace. I wore the masks they forced on me. But today, the silence ends. Because a mother who has looked into the abyss doesn't fear the dark anymore. Part 2. Trapped in the Labyrinth. November 2013, Germany. Let's step back into the labyrinth. A gray, suffocating winter had settled over Germany. Outside the frosted windows, everything was bleached of color. Inside, I was trapped in sterile white walls and a language I couldn't speak. Sitting at a cold metal desk where a transaction had just taken place, just 48 hours before he was born, I signed a marriage certificate. It wasn't a wedding. It was a desperate, humiliating contract, signed for the sole purpose of getting German health insurance so my child wouldn't be born on the streets. I bound my life to a man slipping into anger just to buy safety. And then, day 1, my son arrived. But by day 3, his breathing changed. Every inhale was a scraping, terrible sound. The German doctors spoke over me. Sharp, incomprehensible words. Laryngomalacia, a deformed, underdeveloped larynx. But to me, the clinical term meant nothing. It just meant my baby was suffocating in my arms. And I couldn't understand a word from the people trying to fix him. We were there for a week of pure, unadulterated psychological torture. And my husband, he came to the hospital once, smelling of stale tobacco and draft beer. He looked at our sick, crying son, not with love, but with irritation. "He's always doing that," he muttered, his jaw clenched. "Can't you make him shut up?" When I pleaded with him to stay, to help me understand the doctors for his airway scope, he pulled his arm away with a violent jerk. "You just want attention," he said. "My dad needs me." And the door clicked shut. Part 3. The institutional trap. The architecture of abuse. Let us analyze exactly how this mechanism functions. When we examine the architecture of abuse, we have to look at how isolation shifts the entire dynamic. There is no space for emotion here, only the clinical reality of control. People talk about the honeymoon period after a baby is born. But when you are an immigrant, dependent entirely on your partner for insurance, legal status, and shelter, there is no honeymoon. There is only leverage. My abuser didn't see a sick child that needed protection. He saw a rival for my attention, and his family saw an outsider disrupting their dynamics. This brings us to the institutional trap. The system itself becomes the abuser's silent accomplice. Because I had to enter a convenience marriage for basic neonatal care, I had legally tied myself to my tormentor. The German bureaucracy did not care about the red flags. They saw a married couple on paper. They saw a mother who couldn't articulate her terror because she lacked the vocabulary to say, "He leaves me alone with a suffocating baby while he gets drunk with his father." And then came the reinforcement. My mother-in-law arrived from Poland. She didn't look at the medical monitors. She looked at me with a cold, disgusted sneer. "You're making him sick with your nerves," she whispered. If you were a proper wife, my son wouldn't need to drink to escape this room. That is the exact moment the psychological gaslighting hardens into concrete. When the system gives you no options and the family tells you that your baby's illness is your fault, you start to believe them. You take the guilt into your very bones.
Part 4. Birth of a Warrior. The Drive Home.
But there is a limit. There's a limit to how much guilt a mother's heart can hold before it turns into something else entirely. On the 8th night, we were finally discharged from the hospital. This was our descent back into their reality. The silent, suffocating car ride. My husband driving with bloodshot eyes, glaring in the rearview mirror every time my son wheezed. My mother-in-law whispering in the front. I pressed my son close to my chest in the backseat. The black trees rushed past like the bars of a cage, and as we pulled into that heavy, dark driveway, I realized with absolute clarity, no one was coming to save us. The engine shut off. The silence in the car was deafening. His hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "Get out," he said quietly. "And if that kid keeps me up tonight, both of you are sleeping in the shed."
I didn't cry. My tears had dried up in the crying ward. But as I stepped into the freezing night air, I looked through the kitchen window, and I saw them, a stack of legal documents with my name on them, entirely in German, next to an empty bottle of vodka. Seeing those items on the table triggered a razor-sharp steel in my spine. They thought they had broken me. They thought the isolation had made me weak. They had no idea they had just given me my ultimate purpose.
They wanted me isolated, but they forgot that an army can be built from the stories we share. If you are watching this explainer and you feel like you are trapped in your own silent ward, please know you are not crazy and you are not alone. Will you help tear down the wall they built around us? Every time you share this information, you tear down a piece of that wall. Next time, we step into the house on the hill, where the emotional warfare turned into physical survival. Thank you for listening. Stay strong.